I'm here with Clay Williams as we conclude our energy CEO breakfast series today. And so, Clay, really great to be with you.
Great to be with you. And by the way, thanks for another fantastic breakfast. Always look forward to this breakfast
Well,
every
you've been a
week.
panelist. You've been a panelist before, and we really appreciate your joining us.
Well, it's my pleasure and good to be with you this morning.
Thank you. Clay, as you think about your career, right? What does personal courage require or demand of leadership today that perhaps it didn't require earlier on in your career?
Interesting question. What I'd say is I think all leaders, all legitimate leaders really need to have a set of inviolable principles
Mm.
that they are absolutely going to defend to the wall. Here's a red line we will never cross. We will always do the right thing in this instance. That hasn't changed. I think that's always been a requirement of good leadership. I think organizations need to know that they have leaders that have backbone and they're willing to defend those principles no matter what. That's a rock solid foundation that they can rely on. When I reflect on my career, what has changed, I think that's required us as business leaders to evolve to exhibit new levels of courage. There's this thing called social media that they invented many years ago. Maybe you heard about it. And it's given a platform to anybody that wants to weigh in. And so there are, some sane voices on there, but some crackpots and, screeds in all caps. And so companies now are being drawn into this sort of public um, narrative or conversation around what are, in my view, are frequently divisive and nuanced questions and polarizing and political questions, and asked to sort of weigh in. And so, what I'd say is two things. One is I think business leaders today need to have the courage to just say no. You're not required to weigh in on a policy on every single divisive issue, and have the courage to remain silent on certain things. But the flip side of that is some of these questions are germane to business, right?
Yeah.
And so you think back a few years ago, big push on businesses to make advancements and promotion decisions around factors other than merit. And by that I mean diversity, uh, gender, ethnicity. And so introducing other criteria into that, are we going to be a meritocracy or not kind of question. That's a really important and potentially disruptive path to take. And I think we need to have business leaders that are willing to exhibit courage and weigh in on that subject maybe more forcefully. In the industry that I spent my career in, oil and gas, our industry really was demonized. All the fossil fuel industries a few years ago. Frankly, I think we were lacking in courage and conviction and really needed stronger voices. They're stepping up now to say, this is an industry that has made the world better. It's lifted mankind out of poverty, and we're proud of it, and we're going to defend that. And I think we're much better at that.
Yeah.
But this sort of public narrative is requiring, in some instances, a response, and in some instances, where we need to be discerning and wise is silence. And I think so. There's a new minefield out there for
There's
business.
no minefield, right? And I think it leads to another question, which is that look, we live in an even more complex world,
Yes.
right? Complexity is just growing,
Yeah.
and what should companies do to be aware of, right? A leader's capacity to operating in complexity.
Well, I completely agree. It's a complex world. The pace of change is remarkable and breathtaking. And I still think the best secret weapon to have in that world that's becoming more complex and more complicated are people, and the right people and the right leaders for our teams that really get people and understand. And I would add to it, despite AI and supply chain disruptions and pandemics and
Yeah.
wars in the Middle East and there's a lot going on out there. I think the best place for businesses to be able to handle that is a team that's packed with talent that shares a clear vision of where they're going, have clear roles, that have connections to each other, and are well positioned to be able to evolve and to respond to the complexity that's all, because you can't really predict it, right?
Oh,
Certainly I
yeah,
can't.
yeah.
And so having a team that's agile and can respond and sort of acts as a cohesive unit, which in my mind, really requires good leadership, requires leadership that gets it, gets people. It's a cliche, but business is about people. And so I think the right way to think about this at businesses as they approach an increasingly complex world is, do we have the right leaders who get people who can set that vision, can have teams coalesce around executing that mission, that has an organization that's meeting their needs. They feel good about where they work. They have each other's backs. I mean, it's a high performing team that's full of talent is just a wonderful thing to be a part of. And so I think it's incumbent on boards to figure out, all right, what does the leadership look like that can make that happen?
Yeah, can make that happen. And you talk about leadership, right? There's an element of developing talent
Yes.
and creating a team of talented people.
Yeah.
And there's another piece that you talked about, Clay, which is really about driving, leading, stepping into the fray of the unknown, of the complex,
Yeah.
and bringing the team along with all the various capabilities to be able to address different aspects.
Exactly. And I think a really solid team with good leadership sees these challenges not as challenges, but rather opportunities, right? Every time you have something like this that another black swan that seems to land in a world, what are the opportunities being created? And so I think that is a good foundation for companies going forward.
You talked a bit about it's incumbent upon boards to find the right leader.
Mhm.
What's the value to an organization when CEO succession is done well?
Mhm.
And alternatively, what's the cost when it's done poorly?
Well, it's a great question. I personally believe the single most important question that boards have to ask themselves and answer is, do we have the right CEO or not? What I tell you is that in my personal experience, I spent 12 years in the role. Before that, I spent 18 years reporting to 3 different CEOs. So I was very close to the job. I thought I knew about it when I went in, but I'll be quite honest with you.
Chair's lonely.
It's lonely, and there's nothing that really prepares you for it until you're really in the saddle.
Yeah.
And it's so very different than certainly what most people think about, and even me being closer to the role for so long. And so, what I'd say is that the boards, when it comes to succession, need to look for CEO candidates that have the potential to grow and adapt to those new realities, which aren't necessarily obvious. There's a great Harvard Business School paper written about 30 years ago called 7 Surprises for New CEOs. I don't know if you have saw it before, but it's something I've shared with others and somebody shared with me, and very insightful. And I found every one of them to be true, and but also non-obvious. But I think as you get into the role and you sort to work within this new reality, because there's no other job like it in the company, you need a leader and a new CEO that's going to be able to adapt and grow to that reality. But then the main skill set required is to find a leader that gets people. I mean, it's a cliche, but business is all about people. They're the ones that get it done. As CEO of a big rig manufacturer, I never built one single rig personally, right? It's always done. Everything is done through the team. And so a CEO that is self-aware, is humble, that exhibits vulnerability, that gets the fact that we need teams that are connected to each other. You need talent in the right roles in the company where people really flourish, right? If you find the right role for them, they're having fun, they're connected to a good team. It's extremely rewarding. That's what you need CEOs to be the architect of that team.
We published a paper in the Harvard Business Review talking about CEO succession.
Mhm.
And what were those cases when value was created and when was it destroyed?
Yeah.
And the gist of the article, the gist of our analysis was that CEOs, that an organization is dependent upon the organization and the needs of the organization. When the organization needs to transform,
Yeah.
it's best to bring someone in from the outside
Yeah,
because
right.
they might need to break a little glass.
Yeah.
Right. If it's carrying on with the same trajectory,
Yeah.
you actually destroy more value
Yeah.
by bringing someone in from the outside
Yep.
than internally promoting.
I think that makes perfect sense.
How did you think about what was needed in your organization in terms of what was the next phase, and how did you go about finding that right person to fit that?
Well, what I would tell you is that we already had a fantastic internal candidate, Jose Bayardo, took my place. He joined us as CFO in a very senior role I think 11 years before. And so, a decade plus at the company, knows the people, knows the teams, knows the values. Jose and I work very closely together. He's been a fantastic thought partner leading up to the transition. And so I think for the organization, it's been a very smooth transition. And to your point, preserved those inviolable principles I talked about earlier. Preserves continuity around business initiatives. We're not breaking everything apart and putting it all back together. And I think that's really, really valuable for the company. Part of your earlier question was around the costs of getting this wrong,
Wrong.
and they are immense. You bring in the wrong CEO,
Oh.
and by the way, the organization is very smart, right?
Yeah.
They know pretty quickly if you have the right CEO. They know who should be CEO, and they know, equally importantly, who should not, right?
Yeah.
So a board brings in the wrong CEO. People figure it out quickly, calls into question their confidence in the board's judgment and decision-making process. And so you run the risk of erosion of that amongst the broad organization. You may have high performers leave. You're going to lose 2 years of momentum around executing your strategic plan because it takes boards typically, at least a year, probably 2, to figure out, oh, we have the wrong person. And so it's very disruptive. So I think this is the most important thing boards of directors really do. Do we have the right CEO in the saddle, and really understanding that dynamic? And I would add too, we've all ran into people that, through our careers that are better at managing up than other directions. And so I think it's incumbent on boards to understand, what is that organizational hive mind? What is its opinion of this internal candidate? And if you're bringing in somebody from the outside, talk to their subordinates, talk to their peers, right? Is this a team player kind of person, or is this someone very focused on how they appear to their boss? And getting to the heart of the matter. I think that's what boards need to do when they're in that circumstance.
Understanding both potential and derailers. Okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Clay, it's been an absolute privilege.
Likewise.
I
Thank you.
enjoyed it very much, and thanks for stopping by.
My pleasure. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.